well, first it's great we finally got in here, got in here together.
Thank you for putting it
together. There's a lot of people, obviously, this happened a long time, what you went through happened a long time ago as far as the accident. There's a lot of people that have heard your story, but then there's a lot of people that haven't. The things you've endured and overcome are certainly inspiring, but for those that haven't heard your story before, tell us about that day that changed your life.
Yeah, sure. Gosh, it's a long story to fit into. But I was a 22-year-old kid. This was 2002, November 22nd, 2002. And I was a 22-year-old young man. I just graduated college. I went to Santa Clara up in the Bay Area. I played baseball, so I was an athlete my whole life. And that was certainly part of the thing that made this so hard. But my father asked if I wanted to go on a mountain climbing expedition shortly after I got back from school. And I said, yeah. And we went to go climb a mountain called Pico de Orizaba. So I'll give you the short version and we can dive in deeper if you want. It's a 19,000 foot volcano right outside Mexico City. That's a giant glacier, basically from 14 to 18,000 feet. And we were right at the top, and he had been suffering from altitude sickness. And so I'd stayed back with him. And if you know anything about altitude sickness, it's kind of like having the bends when you scuba dive. It's like, you feel a little tipsy. And but he had all the signs. He seemed like he was doing just fine. And just like that, he slipped and fell. And as I dove for him, I tried to grab his jacket, and my ice axe was roped to my hip. And the hope was to get on top of my ice axe and dig that into the glacier and what they call self-arrest and stop us. And to give you a visual, just imagine like an ice skating ring, a 4,000 foot long ice skating ring that's got like a 30-degree angle. All right. Yeah, it probably was, I'd say more like 10 degrees, but steep enough that if you get going, you're gone. And so anyhow, we were right at the top of that, and he slipped and fell. And as I reached for my ice axe, it came up and hit my forehead here, hit a rock, and came up and knocked me out. And it might have been a blessing because we fell 4,000 feet, and thank gosh, I don't remember much of it, largely because of that probably. But when we came to a stop, we were just short of these cliffs, and somehow we got tangled. No one really knows why we stopped. Supposedly, the next few weeks after that, 13 others fell, and they all perished. They all went right off. So somehow we got really lucky and stopped just short. But came still. My nose was off, my ear was off, my ribs are all broken, and like the real tough part was my head was the size of a basketball from all the swelling. So I couldn't see anything. And so as I came to, I could kind of hear my dad crying, but I couldn't see him. And it was a really eerie feeling trying to figure out where I was and what was going on. And that was the start of a really long, cold night as they tried to get help to us and they couldn't. And we ended up just having to spend the night there. And I started getting pulmonary edema, which makes you feel warm. And so I started taking off. That's the theory, at least we think, that I probably started taking off my clothes. And in the morning, they did get a helicopter to us. And that's how we got off the mountain. But that was like, little did I know that'd be the easiest night. Ironically, out of the next 2 years, it seemed like.
And so after that, when I read the story that's on your website, so after that, what was it, 2 years it took of surgery?
More or less, yeah. Yeah.
And how much was it, like 10 or 12 surgeries you had to go through?
Yeah, well, we came back to Phoenix, and you can imagine there's a lot of frostbite specialists in Scottsdale, right? And right. We didn't really find many anywhere, to be honest with you. There's not a lot you can do other than amputate. And but as we were trying to figure out what to do, I would go down to the burn unit here, and they'd clean my wounds, and we were trying to figure out what to do. And let me take a step back, I guess, to tell the story about where I did all my surgeries. The day I left for the climb, one of my coworkers yelled, "Matt, don't become the next Beck Weathers." And I didn't know who Beck Weathers was. And so I Googled on my phone on the way to the airport, this Beck Weathers guy. And this was like when phones were, you could Google, it was a big deal. And right. This dude had hands that looked just like mine. I couldn't believe how wrangled his hands were. And I remember thinking there's no way I could imagine life like Beck Weathers. Well, after they'd gotten us back here, Christmas had rolled around. So it was about a month after the accident. My fingers were still on, they were black, and we were trying to figure out what to do with them. And the phone had rung on Christmas Day, and we pick up the phone, and it's Beck Weathers. And so we went out to Dallas, and so I mean, it's exactly who I became. It was crazy.
Wow.
So we ended up doing all our surgeries in Dallas. Wow. The left hand was 13 hours, and the right hand was 12. And they did them back to back. So yeah, it was crazy.